بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Welcome everybody to our special lecture tonight. I think it's our third one on the topic of fostering sisterhood in accordance to the Qur'an and the Sunnah. And truth be told, this topic itself requires a lot more time than I'm going to afford it today. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it beneficial. And a topic like this, which is so important, in reality requires a course because there is so much material, so much books, so much benefit the ulama and the people, students of knowledge have put together and have narrated that it also makes you wonder why more material isn't available in a way that it's easier for people to access. So inshallah ta'ala, what we'll try to do today with the time that we have, and we'll try to cover it as much as we can, and whatever we can't, we'll try to dedicate for another time. So let's just jump right into it. So we need to jump in by talking about sisterhood from its foundations, right? Because when we talk about sisterhood, we're using terminology which is often spoken about, heard about, but we don't have maybe a clarity as to what we're talking about. The ulama or scholars, they talk about brotherhood, al-ukhuwa. And they say that brotherhood is just like sisterhood. In fact, you will not find too much evidences in relation to sisterhood. And the reason being is that sisterhood as a concept is like brotherhood. Whatever applies to it applies to that one, as we'll see. So brotherhood, al-ukhuwa, and sisterhood, al-ukhtiyya, right? It's the same concept. Just that one is for women, one for men. So what is brotherhood then? We start from there and we can then navigate. The ulama say that brotherhood, whenever the term is used linguistically, it refers to the blood ties between two men, like this brotherhood. And then that usage then carried on, or was the foundation for which the Islamic meaning was derived, which means two or more people who share in the same faith, right? So the concept then went from nasab, lineage, to deen, to faith. So when we say brotherhood or sisterhood, it can mean two things. Someone is literally your brother or sister, or someone is literally, right, or is figuratively your brother and sister in faith. Raghib Isfahani, he writes, rahimahullah, in Al-Mufradat, page 13, Al-Ukhuwa is a person sharing with another person, both parents or one parent, or from suckling. So when it comes to lineage, you have three patterns or three sources. Either you are a full brother or full sibling, that's both parents, or half sibling, one parent, or from suckling, rida'a. So then he says, then it was used, and the term al-ukhuwa, to refer to a person sharing with another person a tribe, or religion, or profession, or dealing, or love, or other forms of agreements. So you see what happened there? He took the foundational meaning, which is the sharing between two people in their nasab, in their lineage, right? So if somebody's a full brother, you have two parents you share. Half brother, you share one parent. Or foster or mother, my milk mother, as your, right, suckling or a milk sibling. They took from there and they said, well, if someone shares with somebody has an ishtirak, a sharing in deen, or qabila, or sina, or sun'a, or sina'a, like kind of like profession, hirfa, or muamala, or love. At the end of the day, if we say then brotherhood or sisterhood refers to what we know as today two people who are Muslims, who may are not necessarily brothers and sisters or sisters in blood, but they're sisters in faith. And therefore, then the sharing with it, the fact that we share in this commonality, means there is something that we have in common and something we owe each other. So we can say that al-ukhtiyya, the sisterhood that we're talking about today, is the same as al-ukhuwa. In that, it means two people, in this case, two sisters, who are not necessarily blood relatives, but they are Muslims, right? And because they're Muslims, they're brothers, or sorry, sisters in faith, and they have rights over one another and special, right, accommodation and such special virtues that come with it. قال الله تعالى إنما المؤمنون إخوة. Verily the believers are brothers and also sisters. And here's a qa'idah we're going to establish in order to make the whole conversation make sense. Some will say, brother, this is talking about ukhuwah. Where'd you get sisterhood from it? We're going to establish qa'idah. Imam Ibn Uthaymeen, he writes and he mentions in Sharh al-Mumti', volume 3, page 227, and other than him, that when it comes to the Qur'an and Sunnah, and evidences that talk about men in the Qur'an and Sunnah, whatever is applies to men applies to women, except with evidence. Which is important. So everything we're talking about today in the books of adab, akhlaq, and hadith and ayat, they usually talk about men. So some will say, how can we go and we stretch it over to women? From this qa'idah, this principle, whatever is established in regards to men is established in regards to women, except with evidence. ما ثبت في حق الرجال ثبت في حق النساء إلا بدليل. ما ثبت في حق الرجال ثبت في حق النساء إلا بدليل. Whatever is established in relation to men is established in relation to women, except with evidence. So in the Quran and Sunnah, when they talk about akhuwah, it doesn't mean that the sisters are not part of that, right? Because the believers, male and females, awliya ba'dum awliya ba'd, right? They're supporters of one another. We also know that some of the evidences talk about women being good to their fellow women, right? So obviously that's the sisterhood. So that's the concept we're trying to establish, so that we can carry then over all the things that we talk about today from the books. We can carry it over to women, because unless there's evidence that says that this is only for men, men should only behave with men like this, not women, that's different. But that's not what we're going to see is the case. طيب. We move now to the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً. The believers are nothing else than brothers. In our case, the believers, sister women, are nothing but sisters to one another. Imam Abdurrahman Nasir al-Sa'di rahimahullah writes in his tafsir that this is a bond that Allah has established between the believers. If anyone in the furthest east or west is found to believe in Allah, His angels, His book, His messengers, in the last day, then he's a brother to the believers. And with the bond of brotherhood that dictates the believers should love for him what they love for themselves, hate for him what they hate for themselves. Hence the Prophet Muhammad said, enjoying the fulfillment of the rights of the brothers in faith, do not envy one another, do not artificially inflate the prices over one another, do not hate one another, do not undersell one another, and be, O slaves of Allah, brothers. And so this also applies to women. كونوا عباد الله إخوانا. Be, O slaves of Allah, brothers. And this is, again, we're going to say this also for sisters. And he brings the hadith, the believer is the brother of the believer. Al-Muslim أخو المسلم لا يظلمه ولا يحقره, until the end of the hadith. So we're going to establish here that what we're talking about of sisterhood, right, is also same as for brotherhood. Right? The only differences we could make, if we were to make any differences in this regard, is based on evidences for which we are going to show most of the topic is shared. طيب. We need to start over here if we're going to understand sisterhood and brotherhood properly. And this is to do with the way in which the relationships Muslims have with one another. The first problem, I think, appears that we don't, maybe as Muslims, and again, we're all in this together, we're all learning together, we need to conceptualize and understand the topic of the relationships, the alaqat that we have amongst each other. And I made this chart in order to show the lowest to the highest relationships. And you can see here that it's very interesting on the sources on the side, a Tabsir of Imam Hafid ibn Jawzi and Buhur al-Zakhir of al-Safarini. You can find that they bring these points. How are Muslims categorized, right, in terms of our relationship? How are we? So we're all Muslims, hence I put here in the bracket, we're all Muslims. Okay? Now, if you believe in Allah and the last day, all 6 pillars of Iman, as Imam Sa'di mentions, you're a Muslim. Or you have mutlaq Iman, basic Iman. You're in the brotherhood and sisterhood of faith. Hence, you down here. And we call this, the ulama call this, general brotherhood or sisterhood of faith. Pay attention. Anybody who is a Muslim is down here in the sense that no matter if you know them or you don't know them, they are your brother in faith, sister in faith. And that's the foundation of our conversation, because we're going to start over here. I'm not talking up here, because I'm going to show you the higher you go up, the more issues, not issues, more rights and responsibilities there are. So we're starting down there. Not 10, not 13. Yeah, Jazakallah khair. I will correct. Yeah, so all the notes and stuff, there's going to be all kinds of mistakes. They will be corrected, inshallah, at the end. So Jazakumullah khair for whoever finds any mistakes. طيب. So general brotherhood. So they say al-ukhuwatul aam. That means anybody who's a Muslim is in there. This is what Imam as-Safarin, he mentioned, and Ibn al-Jawzi before him, and others. إنما المؤمنون إخوة. So if anyone's a Muslim, they're here. Your relationship with them, you have brotherhood, sisterhood. Then there's a brotherhood and sisterhood of blood. So somebody who's a Muslim, and then on top of that is your brother in faith, or your sister, sorry, brother in lineage, or your sister lineage, your literal blood siblings. So they're higher because, as Safari mentions, because they have both Islam and nasab. They combine between both blood ties and religious ties. You guys with me? Here we learn a benefit that if a person has blood ties but no religious ties, the person who has religious ties is stronger. The ulama, they mentioned that the ukhuwa of Islam, al-ukhuwa al-imaniyya, al-ukhtiyya al-imaniyya, the sisterhood of faith, is stronger than the sisterhood and blood and brotherhood of blood. Why? Because in the inheritance, we know someone is a non-Muslim, they don't inherit from you, just like you wouldn't inherit from them. You see, and we'll see that then the ulama actually explicitly mentioned this point to highlight what? The value. But when they're Muslim and they have that brotherhood and sisterhood from lineage, they have a special or more higher level of connection because more rights are owed to them. Okay, let's keep going now. Friendship. Right? Why is friendship higher? The ulama puts friendship higher, as I'll show you in a second. It's not because they have more rights because of lineage or something. They have them faith, but you and I interact with them at a higher level. A sadaqa is friendship. We interact with these people more, hence their rights increase. And I'm going to lay down a principle in the next slide that's really going to come handy in talking about what sisterhood and brotherhood and friendship, what it's really supposed to look like. So friendship, Safarini puts it above. Why? Because they interact with you more. And so does Imam Ibn al-Jawzi, and others. All these ulama, they put it there. Because friendship is a connection between two people, and they're sharing some commonality beyond faith. So they're Muslim and they share something else. Could be like a love for cooking or whatever, right? Studying and etc. And the last one is the specific brotherhood and sisterhood. This is called al-ukhuwatu khassa, right? The specific brotherhood, or ukhtiyatu khassa, specific sisterhood. And this one is somebody who is your Muslim sister, who isn't necessarily your relative, but your relationship with them is higher than friendship because you interact with them at a higher level and you have more love and more connection and more. So you went beyond that. And that's the kind of brotherhood and sisterhood as a community we yearn for, right? The one that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke about when he talked about Abu Bakr Siddiq. Okay, to give you context, let's talk about Abu Bakr Siddiq for a second, right? The Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he talked about Abu Bakr, his best friend, right? And he talked about how first that Allah's messenger said that Allah gave him and what's it called, especially khulla, yani closeness to Allah. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has that kind of special connection with Allah, right? The best of Allah's creation. And then he said that Abu Bakr, right, he's my companion and he is my friend, but if it wasn't for the fact that I am the friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and have that status of khulla, then Abu Bakr will be my friend. Here, what is he highlighting? What does he mean by this wording friend? What he's trying to tell the people is Allah is taking him, alayhi sallam, as a khalil, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam is talking about Abu Bakr being his close brother. He has that level. He says, وَلَكِنْ أُخُوَّةُ الْإِسْلَامِ وَالْمَوَدَّةِ وَمَوَدَّتُهُ. Right? However, I have with Abu Bakr أخوة الإسلام. Which أخوة is it? The highest level. Abu Bakr is Abu Bakr is Abu Bakr, right? He was there. Sahib al-Ghar, he was there in the cave. He was there in the Hijrah. He was there day one. He's not down here. He's up here in the sense that his rights are more. This is what he was talking about. Now, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the reason why he obviously was told that Abu Bakr is my companion, and it's sufficient for us is our brotherhood in Islam, right? Is that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam stated with Allah, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him the Khalil. وَلَوْ كُنْتَ مُتَّخِذًا خَلِيلًا غَيْرَ رَبِّي لَاتَّخَذْتُ أَبَا بَكْرٍ خَلِيلًا. If it wasn't the fact Allah took me as a close companion, close, right? The closest possible friendship, then I would have taken Abu Bakr as one. The benefit we take from all of this is what? In our presentation, our discussion today, and I'm going to speed up a little bit because of the time, we're talking over here. Anybody who's a Muslim sister has sisterhood. We're not talking about your best friend and your close companion. Those people have even hukuk even more. We're talking about the lowest common denominator between all of us, which is faith. And that person who said La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, who has the 6 pillars of Iman, 5 pillars of Islam, that person has rights, responsibilities we owe them, and connection. That as a community, if we don't upkeep, then we're going to find what we find today of disunity and also people suffering, right, from the fact that they're not able to find good companionship. So here now is a point. I'm going to skip this for a second, right? And get to here, this principle here. Or maybe I'll come back to it later, inshallah, since right, there's some more here. It's going to come back. It's going to connect to this. So I'm going to connect it to when I get there. Okay, virtues of sisterhood. We don't have much time for this, but all of us probably are aware of all the ahadith and ayat about the virtue of sisterhood and brotherhood in Islam. So we're not going to run through a lot of them. The benefits is that the fada'il, the virtue, the attribute associated with sisterhood are many. And it has to do with the people who have, right, not only the basic sisterhood, but even the higher level sisterhood, that they're going out of their way and they're forging, right, ties with their friends or people who are high level, and they're giving them their hukuk. So even if someone wants to say, these virtues, do they apply to everybody? Every Muslim you has rights. But when it comes to the virtues, if somebody wants to get these rewards, of course, this person is going to reach a higher level because this person is going to be dealing with their friends and their close, specific, right, sisters, higher at a higher level because they're doing more for them. As we'll see, the more you do for people, the higher your reward, the more you get these rewards. One hadith and a benefit: sister loving her sister for the sake of Allah is from the strongest handfuls of faith. Abdullah ibn Abbas narrates, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the firmest handful of Iman is to have allegiance for Allah and disavow for Allah's sake. Loving for Allah's sake and hating for Allah's sake. So loving for Allah's sake, you love your fellow Muslim sisters for Allah's sake. That's highly rewarding. Only for Allah's sake. Not dunya, not money, not status, not reciprocity. You're not expecting anything back from them. Another one, a sister loving her sister for the sake of Allah is from the strongest handfuls. Okay, so I got to change the title there. But this one has to do with the shade you're going to receive Yawm al-Qiyamah. Abu Hurairah reported Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as saying, verily Allah would say on the day of resurrection, where are those who have mutual love for my glory's sake? Today I shall shelter them in my shade when there's no shade but my shade. So the title, I'm going to correct later. It should say that those who love Allah, love each other for Allah's sake, are going to be shaded Yawm al-Qiyamah when there's no shade except for the shade of Allah. Again, loving for Allah's sake, what does that mean? What does it mean you love your sister for Allah's sake? We're going to look at that later. Another virtue. Those who love for Allah's sake will be upon pulpits of light in the day of judgment. Mu'adh bin Jabal narrates, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Allah the Exalted has said, for those who love one another for the sake of my glory, there will be seats of light on the day of resurrection, and they'll be envied by the prophets and the martyrs. This hadith, Sahih Targhib, Shaykh Al-Albani authenticated it. Some will say, what does it mean, envy by the prophets and messengers? Are they going to be in a higher status than prophets and messengers? And the answer, no. So the envy that they're going to have, scholars explain, is not an envy of someone who doesn't have this higher level or more. It's envy of somebody who wish they could have more, but they don't have. They wish they could have that particular thing that on top of what they already have. So I'll give you an example. One ulama Ahlul Hadith, he explains this hadith very nicely, and he actually went in depth. His response was this summary. He said, imagine somebody has 100 dinar, right, or 1,000 dinar or something like this, and he has, say, somebody else who has 1 or 2 or 10 dinar. The person who has 1,000 dinars is like the example of prophets and the martyrs, right? At the highest levels. Prophet's higher, then the martyr is underneath. And I mean you, right? We might have the 10 dinar. Okay. The Prophet who has 1,000, or a martyr who has 1,000 dinars, you would like the other 10 too. So you can have 1,010. So he envies him from that angle that he wishes he has on more than what he already has. So it's not envy of jealousy, hasad, it's ghibta. It's a healthy or halal jealousy where you hope that Allah gives you on top of what you have a similar bounty your brother has without removing that bounty from that person. Remember, envy is of two types, the bad one and the good one. The bad one is you hope Allah takes somebody else's bounty and gives it to you. That's haram. That's the envy. That's haram. And the good envy is the one when you see something your brother has, you say, I wish Allah gave me similar to what they have without me hoping that they lost what they have. So this hadith is just showing that if somebody loves for Allah's sake, they're friends, they're sisters, they're close sisters. Imagine the reward. One more hadith, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam focused on brotherhood so much, he established the bond of brotherhood. What kind of bond of brotherhood was this? It's not the brotherhood faith. They're already brothers. But Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he made them brothers on top of them being brothers. He's talking about the higher levels of brotherhood. Between who? Salman Abu Darda, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, and Sa'id ibn Rabi'a and others. Sa'id ibn Rabi'a and others. So we see Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam forming these bonds. And this shows you again the pivotal role of brotherhood and sisterhood. Because Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam taking his time out to do that. Of course, scholars say at that time in Islam, when the early days of Islam, the brotherhood that the Sahaba had was so great that they could inherit from one another. That has been abrogated in our Sharia, as we know. But the scholars, they say that the idea and the concept of having brotherhood doesn't disappear, right? So all of this is the fada'il, the virtues. There are plenty more. We don't have the time to get into it, but I would encourage people to read about them to encourage us to have better relationships with our sisters and try to forge them. The reality that we're facing, the decline of proper brotherhood and sisterhood. The reason why this conversation, this whole special lecture exists is because we all are suffering, right? We're all witnessing and we're all probably lamenting the loss of good brotherhood and sisterhood. It is from the signs of the day of judgment. Maymuna radiallahu anha, she said, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, how are you going to be when the religion becomes disordered, blood is shed, adornment becomes apparent, buildings become distinguished, begging becomes apparent, the brothers differ, and the ancient house, yani the Kaaba, is burnt. Allahu Akbar. Silsila hadith sahih, Shaykh Al-Albani authenticated this hadith. And the Shaykh comments on this hadith too, from the signs of the day of judgment. Each one's a sign. And you can notice some of them are apparent in our time. Adornment has become apparent. Right? The zeen of the dunya we all have today. Or the buildings becoming distinguished, yani special looking buildings, fancy architecture. Begging has become apparent. And the one I highlighted, the brothers differ. Scholars say it means at the end of times, people are going to differ. Right? The brothers of faith, they're going to differ. Differ over what? Matters which they shouldn't be differing over. And if this applies to the brothers, then we go back to our principle. It also includes sisters likewise differing one from one another. And then now I'm going to mention some speech of Ibn Jawzi, rahimahullah, in Sayyid al-Khatir, Capture Thoughts, in which he complains at his time he couldn't find his good friends being good friends. Imagine, 597 Hijri, sisters. Today is 1445 Hijri. When we talk about people say today, I can't find a good friend. You're not the only one who's complaining, right? Look what he says. I had friends and close companions whose friendship I was proud of. After some time, I noticed that they did not fulfill what friendship and brotherhood necessitates. So I started to blame them until I realized the deeper meaning. What benefit does blame have? If they become better afterwards, and after I blame them, they will act that way in order to avoid hearing me blame again. Look how clever he is. Allahu Akbar. If you criticize somebody for something, he's not going to change maybe fully, or she might change only to avoid the criticism. Huh? He says, but if they became better afterwards, okay, and not because of the purity of relationship they have. So I said I was about to boycott them, but decided not to, as I realized that people are either acquaintances or friends. Allah. Look at the way he's dividing the people. People, he says, are acquaintances or friends. And what does that mean? Everybody who you know is your friend. He's trying to show you that some people are like they're there to thick and thin. And we'll see in a second, towards the end, how that looks. He said, that being said, it's not the right thing to do to boycott them. I would rather just shift them from the circle of those who I deem as true brethren to the circle of those who I deem as dear friends. You know, today the non-Muslims, they talk about circles of influence and circles of what are we called? I forgot the second one. Circle of influence, a circle of something. I forgot the second one. Concerns, sorry, circle of concerns. And they talk about these kinds of categorizations in our life. People are influencing us. People, we're influencing them. when you think about what he's trying to say, some people cannot be maybe your true friend. Right? If I just can go back for a second, some people don't deserve to be here. They might be down here, and some people are just going to be down here. And that doesn't mean they're not your brother in faith or sister in faith. They're just not going to be at the same level. And what he's trying to highlight, and I'm going to just get to the rest of his speech because what he's saying here is, subhanAllah, so interesting. That people are not what he imagined. Over time, they changed. And then he says something interesting when he gets to this part here. As he continues, he says, and over here, the majority of people today fall in the category of acquaintances. And to have a friend amongst them is something rare to find. For having a true brother is something that no longer exists. So do not have high hopes about it. 597 Hijri, he died. This is what he's trying to say. It's gone, right? And that is his opinion. But then he says, in fact, I notice the purity of relationship cannot be maintained between blood brothers, between man and his son or his wife. Therefore, do not seek what you cannot get. Take aside and deal with people like how you deal with strangers. Again, maybe is a is a siha was a little harsh, but it is time again. Someone who has wisdom. This is what he's concluding. And the reason I'm highlighting this, sisters, imagine us today when we find all the khilafat, and all the problems people complain about brotherhood, sisterhood. We're not alone in those complaints. But the good news, we're not trying to set up a problem without a solution. So we need to understand then how we're going to solve this issue. How can we foster sisterhood? So we need to understand this properly. We can't be talking in generalities. We need the details. So what we're going to do in this presentation, inshallah, in this lecture, we have two things I want to highlight. Sisterhood essentially is based on two core matters. Number one, right, is the person we already talked about who is a sister in Islam. Number one, they have rights. And we have to establish the rights between the sisters. If somebody is a sister in faith, let alone somebody who has even a higher level to you, you must give them their right. And this is one of the biggest problems that we have, that we might not, all of us collectively, nobody here is exempt. We all have to renew our intentions and renew our relationship to see, okay, how well are we doing that angle? So what are those rights? I'm going to eliminate some of them. And there's much, much more. Again, like I said, this topic requires a course. We don't have enough time. And number two, then, what are some practical steps, qawaid, principles, some tawjihat, guidelines to help strengthen the sisterhood? Some wasail. I want some specific. And I'm going to be very specific because the books that I'm drawing from are super specific. Right? The ulama did not leave us with generalities. And my goal then here, inshallah, and my encouragement to sisters as they're going through this lecture with me, try to think of yourself ways to go about in your own personal life and trying to bring this about and sharing it with others and trying to create that better sisterhood that we all long for. طيب, al-huquq, the rights of sisterhood. What are these rights? First of all, if somebody is a sister in faith, she has a right. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu told us, the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, al-Muslim akhul Muslim. A Muslim is a brother Muslim. And so therefore we can also say a Muslim is a sister, all right, of another Muslim, right? So each sister is a sister to each other. Okay, if somebody is your sister in faith, just like if they imagine they were your sister in nasab, what does that mean? They have some rights. This is the whole point. You can't tell me someone is your brother in faith or sister in faith and there's nothing between you and them except salam when you see them. Is it? No, there's more. And this is the part where we need to start thinking about, okay, what are those huquq? But there is huquq, there are rights. And this is the first step in imagining how we can deal with our sisters better. We need to give people their rights. Okay, we need to understand people have rights. If you don't give them the rights, you're falling short. Whoever doesn't do it is falling short. Whoever tramples the rights is responsible Yawm al-Qiyamah. And this is important. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the hadith of Salman Abu Darda, when he talked about the rights, he says, فَأَعْطِ كُلَّ ذِي حَقٍّ حَقَّهُ. So you should give the rights of all those who have rights on you. Therefore, the ulama, in trying to clarify these rights, have written books and they illuminated and highlighted and listed with adillah, evidences, every right. Some books are big, some are small. They highlight the rights. But I want to start by mentioning that there are levels to this rights. So if you go back to the chart I mentioned, right, I'm going to show you in a second, but I'm going to get this principle to help us. There are different levels of relationship between sisters, right? The sisterhood of faith, and the sister and blood and faith, and there's the friendship, and there's the highest level of sisterhood. Okay. The person who has, right, a nearer relationship to you, in which there is more frequent interactions between you and them. then that person has more rights than another person. Okay, so here it is. The nearer a person is to you, and the more you interact with them, means they have more rights over you than others who are further away and interact less with you. That's the principle we're going to take in a second. This is what we're going to live by. So let me go back to the slide so you can see. We can see it. Someone in level 4 has rights. Someone in level 2 has more rights. Why? Because not only are they a Muslim, you interact with them more, share more commonalities, interact and do things for each other more, hence the person has more rights. This is one of the problems that happen, that we treat everybody the same, and this is a mistake. Somebody's a Muslim, they have basic rights. Someone's a friend, you said, right? Siddiq or Sahib, Khalil, you name it, which level you want to put them in, their levels. Then what? You're going to give them more rights. And as scholars say, the more you have friends, even more rights on top of that, because you have more. And the more sisters you know, the more you have to remember they have rights over each other, both of you, two-way street. Now, what about someone's up here? Someone's like your best friend, like you're like a Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That's your ukht, your sister who is your in faith, who is so close to you, like number one. That person not only has more rights, you also have to treat them differently than that person who you don't know. You can't treat them the same. You got to give them more. And how do I know? How do we know this? Abu Bakr Siddiq anhu versus any other Sahabi. When Umar and Abu Bakr got into an issue once, and Abu Bakr came to complain to Umar, what did Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam say to Umar? Umar is so close. Umar is so close to Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, to number 2 in line. But he told him, will you not please stop harming my companion? Will you not leave my companion alone? SubhanAllah, Abu Bakr, look how he showed Umar how close Abu Bakr is to him. Umar is close too. And Umar started crying. Kind of apologizing because he felt so bad. See, this is the thing that we need to think about. When we talk about friendship and sisterhood, we got to put things in place. Someone closer to you, you afford them more excuses than the person further than you. But sometimes we treat the people closer to us worse than those further than us. And this is because we don't understand these principles. And I'm all guilty, including myself. We're all guilty of this. So nobody here can say they didn't do that before. But here's the principle in Jawzi he establishes in Tafsirah, page 634, where he says, وَإِذَا ثَبَتَتْ هَذِهِ الْحُقُوقُ لِاشْتِرَاكِ فِي الْإِسْلَامِ فَكُلَّمَا زَادَتِ الْمُخَالَطَةُ وَصَفَى زَادَتِ الْحُقُوقُ. That if these rights are established due to the sharing the religion of Islam, that whenever there is an increase in interactions and purity, there is an increase in rights. Hence, why the friend is higher than the who? Than the blood brother who's a Muslim. Because your blood brother, you love them, or your blood sister, but you might interact, wallahu a'lam, with your friend a little bit more, depending on what age you're in. And then they're going to then have some more huquq. Not the same level of huquq, not the same, but different. Right? So, for example, your sister, she inherits from you. Your brother, friend doesn't. But your friend, if they make a mistake or they did something wrong, you're going to treat them a little bit differently, or you're going to give them more excuses because they're so close to you. Right? So the point I'm trying to say, the higher they go up, the more the rights they have, but also the more we need to deal with them in a fair way. May Allah give us tawfiq to understand this principle to begin with. Inshallah, we'll take the questions at the end. So if anyone has any questions, you can put them in there, in the drop box, and we'll take them in so that we could try to finish the presentation since the time is limited. But you can leave the questions in the drop box, the chat box. We'll take them as at the end, all of them. طيب, let's move on now. This principle, inshallah, becomes clear to us that we need to keep in our mind, that we need to have that kind of understanding. The higher they go up, the more that we need to give them their rights. And that means that we need to know these rights. We cannot say to ourselves, hey, that's just my fellow sister, I see her in Jum'ah only. Okay, fine, you only see her in Jum'ah. What does that mean then? What am I supposed to do, even though my interactions are that limited? Is there something more than just saying salam? That's what we need to figure out. Okay, moving along now. So the higher they go up, the more interactions, more purity they have, the more rights they're going to have. What are those rights? Scholars now, they list many of them. Due to the time, I'm just going to mention some, not all, just some. Number 1, first right, consolation and support. Somebody's your friend? No, someone's your sister in Islam, base level. Even so, friend has more of this. I'm talking level 4, sisterhood. You have to give them consolation, console them, support them, solace, give them solace, and anytime they're in difficulty. And this is obviously collective responsibility, not individual one. in the sense that as a community, let's say there's some of our sisters that are going through a hard time financially, hard time, they're going through a rough patch in their life, they're going through a divorce, the child is sick, anything. We got to be there for them. And collectively, and obviously that means someone has to do it, otherwise we're all in trouble. And this is important because Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he spoke about how important it is to be there for somebody. In fact, you could test someone's friendship by this. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu reported, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, if anyone relieves a Muslim believer, from one of the hardships in this world life, Allah will relieve him of one of the hardships of the resurrection. And if anyone makes it easy for one who's indebted for him, while finding difficult to repay, Allah will make it easy for him in this world and the hereafter. And if anyone conceals the faults of a Muslim, Allah will conceal his faults in this world and hereafter. Allah helps his slave as long as the slave helps his brother. So that's the last part, encompassing everything. So helping out when they're in need. Now, someone says some sisters aren't able to join because they reach maximum capacity. Yeah, that one I can't really control. Right? I don't know if we could change that at this stage, right? But inshallah, if they can't join in, then we're just going to have to send the recording, because I think last time we had. Let me just check here. I don't know if we could change that. Allahu A'lam. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to continue because last time we had to make some adjustments. Inshallah, we'll just keep it as it is. طيب, so Allah في عون عبد ما كان عبده في عون أخيه. Okay, next. Tabarani, he brings in his narration, and this is a narration which is authentic. That Tabarani reports, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, for me to walk with my brother to fulfill a need is more beloved to me than making i'tikaf in this Masjid Nabawi for 1 month. And so here we can see that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he's talking about walking to fulfill the need of his brother. How important is to him? More than i'tikaf 1 month. Just to walk to help fulfill it. Compare that today to a time when we find the sad reality that sometimes we all are busy and we forget each other. But what does consolation and support look like? That's the question we need to look at, and this is what we're going to mention. All right, someone says you can go live Telegram. It's going to be recorded, inshallah. So whoever couldn't get it live, inshallah, we're going to record it. It's going to be recorded and put into the YouTube. So we apologize for that because some stuff outside of my control, at least. طيب, Imam Ibn Qayyim, he writes, rahimahullah, in Kitab al-Fawaid, page 286 and 287, saying that there are different ways of consoling believers: consolation with wealth, consolation with high rank, consolation with body and service, consolation with advice and instruction, consolation with supplication and seeking forgiveness for them, and consolation by sympathizing with them. Look at that one, sympathizing. These forms of consolation are according to the faith of the servant. Whenever the faith is weak, the consolation will also be weak. Whenever the faith is firm, the consolation will also be. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was the person who consoled his companions the most, and he follows consolations according to the degree in which they follow him. When you think about this, now we start to see how much we need to start focusing, right? That we need to do better when it comes to being there for our sisters. Now, some will say, I can't be there for them. Someone has a financial problem. No problem. If you imagine now, and let's give a practical example of sisterhood. If your sister comes to you and says, I'm having a financial problem, or her and her family can't afford something, or something that is, the expenses are going up, I can't necessarily maybe give them money. So what I'm going to give them, I'm going to give them my advice and instruction, what they can do to improve the situation, or I'm going to at least sympathize with them. And that is rewarding. And the person who consoles their believer to the best of their ranks and be there for them, that's highly rewarding. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't always have money to give to the people when they asked him, because sometimes he didn't have. So what would he do? This is a good and practical example. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when they come to him and they ask him for something, he doesn't have it, not momentarily. And this is a great example about taking into practice what we can do. So if someone comes to us and says, I need some money, right? And we can't give it to them right now. So Allah says in Surah Al-Isra, chapter 17, verse 28, وَإِمَّا تُعْرِضَنَّ عَنْهُمْ ابْتِغَاءَ رَحْمَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكَ تَرْجُوهَا فَقُلْ لَهُمْ قَوْلًا مَيْسُورًا. If anyone, O Muhammad, turn away from, right, any one of you, O Muhammad, turn away from them, right, the kindred, the poor, the wayfarer, etc., whom we have ordered to give them their rights, and you're waiting for the mercy of Allah, your Lord, for which you hope, to speak unto them a soft, kind word, Allah will give me and I shall give you. What does this mean? If someone comes to the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he didn't have, he would never say to them no. He would say to him, come tomorrow, next time, inshallah, I will give you. Until the day he died, alayhi salatu wasalam, what happened? Abu Bakr Siddiq would be giving out anything that people owed. Anything that the people were owed to by Rasulullah, sympathizing, kind words, advice. That's one. That's the first right. And I think we can all try to improve ourselves because Ibn Qayyim says whenever the faith is weak, the consolation is weak. So imagine someone reaches out to you, especially sisters, because they're much more communicative and mashallah, expressing their problems or their issues and talking to one another and trying to seek help, or compared to the men maybe. And then sometimes they might not get the response at all, or not a good one. So sometimes we got to be careful with that. We try our best just to be there, but try to be in a way that which is the best example. The best example. Number two, visiting the sick. If somebody's sick, as a sister, in faith, you have to visit them. And it's not wajib on everybody. It's not wajib aini, it's wajib kifai. It's a communal obligation. But here's the hadith. Abu Hurairah reports, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, a Muslim has 6 duties towards other Muslims. When you meet him, you should salute him, yani give him salam. And when he invites you, or she invites you, accept his or her invitation. When he asks for advice, give it to them. When he sneezes, praise Allah and praise Allah, say, may Allah have mercy upon you. When he's ill, visit him, and when he dies, follows his funeral. Here the scholars, they say that this is a communal obligation. But when we look at this narration, here's the evidence is communal. Some of the scholars, they say that it's wajib on everybody, but scholars say that it can only be wajib, and if you understood correctly, it's communal, because some of these things are not wajib but in themselves. So either it's recommended or it's wajib at a communal level. Today, we have to ask ourselves, how many times do we know that we visit one another, right? In a way that is even there, right? Or even present. Are we visiting one another? Some might say, brother, it's too hard. People are in hospital, people are far. So here's the good news. The ulama say that if anyone visits one another by visitation, makes visitation by phone, by calling them when you hear about them sick, in the hospital or bedridden or at home, not feeling well, calling them. Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah Salihin says if you call them, it counts. You get the same word, especially if you can't go. So to give you an example, somebody's admitted to the hospital, you're at work or at home, you're it's out and about. I can't go there. What do? I send them a message, a voice note, and I pick up the phone. I let them know I know, and I'm there for you. And this is a communal, right? Sisters, communal. Imagine we all know somebody who's sick. So when I expect everybody's message, some of us and over others. But today, sometimes you find, subhanAllah, maybe that, especially someone who might not be as well connected with others, they might go sick or disappear for a long time and nobody knows. And that's not good, right? That's not good sisterhood, that someone disappears or gets sick. Because when you're sick, you're absent. Okay, when you're sick, you're absent. So clearly you're not there. And second thing is, people, you need of being cheered up. What's the wisdom behind visiting someone who's sick? To cheer them up, to make them feel better, to make them feel like there is hope. Allah will cure them. Don't give up. So imagine you can't do it physically. You pick up the phone or you send them something, a gift. All this counts. So that's another great benefit. Someone says, what is meant with the consolation with the high rank? Right. So here, right, with high rank means your status, right? Somebody's status. Right, so you're gonna console someone by giving them, either lending them or leveraging your own high status, right? So again, Ibn Qayyim is showing different ways of being there for people, and we know in the Sharia this is a high level thing. And I just give you one example because of the time. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was very perceptive. Whenever he noticed someone missing, he would check in on them. As we see examples of him visiting people at their homes, right? There's one hadith in Sunnah Nasai, Shaykh Al-Albani authenticated. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there used to be a man and his son who used to attend his gathering. And in his gathering, this Sahabi and his son used to gather, and his son used to come and sit in the lap of his father. One day, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came to Dars, and he noticed the man is not there. And he noticed again he wasn't there. So he asked the Sahaba, how come I don't see so-and-so anymore? He said, Ya Rasulullah, his son died. And he doesn't want to come to the majlis anymore, because every time he comes to majlis, it reminds him of his son, because he used to bring his son to the majlis, to the sitting of knowledge. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam then went and called them. They came, he gave him consolation about what, saying to him, would you want rather your son to come back in the dunya and be with you, or would you be happy that you know he's at the gates of Jannah, any door you any where you want to go, or in Jannah, or any gate you're going to enter, he's going to be there with you. Which one do you prefer? He said, I prefer the akhirah. He said, be patient, Allah will grant you that. Amazing how Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Shaykh Al-Albani authenticated the hadith. He noticed he's missing. That's the part I'm so interested in. He noticed he's missing. Sometimes we are all guilty. We don't realize people are missing. We don't call them. We don't check them. We never seen them before in the messages. We never see them for so long. And you wonder later on why the sisterhood is broken. Well, we're not even really. Is it sisterhood if someone goes missing for a month or more and no one knows? And how did Rasul console him? He granted him the comfort of knowing that his son's going to be with him Jannah, and he's going to get there too. Inshallah, if he's patient. That I can say is a good example of taking it, right, and putting it together. Inshallah, that hadith, we could put the actual text into the presentation later. Third, right, keeping their secrets. Right, this is a very important one. Jabir bin Abdullah reports, the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when a man tells something to another man and then departs, it is a trust. إذا حدث رجل, if a man talks to one man, ثم التفت, then he turns the other way, فهي أمانة. It is trust, a trust. Scholars try to explain this hadith in two ways you can see here. What does iltafata mean here? Interpretation one, while the person is telling you something, they're looking left and right in order that no one can hear what they're saying. In order that no one can hear what they're saying. That means it's a secret. If someone tells you a secret, what do? You got to entrust it. The second meaning is that someone told you something and then they left. When they left, that means they entrusted the information with you. It's a secret now. You are not allowed to tell someone unless you have permission. You see, sister, this is one we all have to be mindful of. Somebody told you something. It is not our business to tell someone not illa bi'idnihin or bi'idniha or except with her permission. Sometimes we do it by accident, right? We just say, oh, somebody told me they're going there and there. If it doesn't concern you and I to tell the other person, ask before telling. Because the key of this is that ifsha'u sirr, spreading secrets, is a sin. And it's not permissible except when needed. I think a lot of times the sisterhood becomes a little bit shaky because we share things which are sometimes interesting, kind, nice, and we forgot to take the information that consent. Simple example, someone told you, someone else they know is getting married or is pregnant, it's going to have a child, right? And accidentally you went and you told, right, somebody else. Okay, and that person does somebody else. The next thing you know, the person who's pregnant, going to have the child or is going to get married, suddenly hears that everyone knows that. How did it reach them? Innocently, someone told someone. That's the thing that we need to stop doing because that's a violation of the sisterhood. Here we go now, a practical example showing you we got to not only bite our tongue, we got to train the nafs. Even Josie talks about it, training the nafs. The first problem comes is that we don't even realize telling people secrets is not even a good thing. Not everything's a secret anyways, right? But something's a secret, like it's something nobody should know or very few people. Look at this hadith. Abdullah Umar reports that Nabi Umar was trying to marry off his daughter Hafsa when she became widowed. He wanted her to marry Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr didn't say anything when it got proposed. And later on, he also asked Uthman. Uthman didn't say nothing. Umar got angry, right? Because it's human nature, right? These are my two best friends, and nobody's telling me yes or no. So Abu Bakr met him later and said, nothing stopped me from returning to you about the matter, considering the offer, except I knew Allah's Messenger had mentioned Hafsa. They want to marry her. And I could never let out the secret of Allah's Messenger. I could never let it out. Allah. Imagine guys, how much that you have to bite your tongue. Someone close to you. Your best friend is going to get married. It's not your business to tell someone else, except if they allowed you. Maybe Abu Bakr could have told Umar, Abu Bakr is in the conversation now. And he's not saying nothing. Allahu Akbar. Like this, to show you Sahaba's level of brotherhood. It's like and community, something else. We got to really hone in on these examples. How do you prevent this from happening? Let's be practical here. The first step, us as sisters, sisters should not tell their sisters their secrets. Try to hold back, tell them stuff that that later on it's not good that someone else know about. And what I mean by this is that some stuff you don't have to tell someone, like, something happened to you when you're young or something like it's really traumatic. It's very difficult to tell people, but you tell some people. But let's say you told someone, you're like, I don't think I should have told them that. It's not necessary they know it. Or sometimes you tell people stuff about other people that, it's hard for you to keep it to your chest. Just remember, if you tell people your secrets, it's already it's at risk of being shared. Ibn Hibban, he writes in Road al-Uqala, this is a summarized version, English translation. And also you can see some good advice Ibn Jawzi in his Capture Thoughts. He says, whoever seeks to traverse the way of the people of wisdom and intelligence should keep his inner thoughts secret. He should not declare that which he conceals to anyone, whether he deems him trustworthy or untrustworthy. because eventually at some point in your time, your relationship with one another may change, and then he will reveal that which he used to keep secret to spite the other person. Allah, today, if you go online, you see majority of the problems you find, people have problems and they were keeping tabs on one another. Now, how are they doing that? Someone told you something disturbing or something you knew was wrong or something which, and then later you're not friends anymore? Okay, I'm pulling out the receipts, everything I have on this person. And sometimes you notice it. Even Josie talks about it as well in Sayyid al-Khatib, to capture thoughts about husband and wife. Sometimes husband and wife tell each other secrets that don't concern neither of them. It's not befitting, he says. Because tomorrow, if you divorce, you have all her secrets, she has all your secrets. What do you think is going to happen, right? And this is what I mean by secret. Some things it's not like a haqqa over each other. Of course, something relates to somebody else, a different story. All right, please, let's not get it mixed up. We're talking about like you're just talking about something. I don't know how you feel about something. It's unnecessary to tell someone that. The second thing, do not ask your sister to reveal her secrets. Sometimes we make the mistake by trying to pressure people to say things to us we're not supposed to. So, for example, these kind of games we have in our culture, right? Which are from the kuffar, the non-Muslims, where we play truth or dare and other such nonsensical games. We're telling people absolutely unacceptable things. Ibn Qudamah, he writes in, we're finding the characters in English, what is Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin. All right, this is a translation of it. He says, one should not ask his friends about affairs that they do not want to reveal. And when he sees them, and he continues from there. So you shouldn't even pester them to do that. So sometimes you ask someone like, tell me about something like this when you're younger. That's not your business. من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعنيه. Tell your business. And I'm highlighting this point because I think the sisters know it better, right? That sometimes innocent conversation can get a little bit too much. Right? We're asking too much, we're pestering people. We want to know this, and we don't want to know overload information. It's overshare, right? We're oversharing. And look what he says: one must keep the secrets even if the ties have been broken. That's the real sisterhood. Someone told you something, and now they don't talk to you anymore. You don't tell anyone what they told you, right? Because he amana. And one more thing now, I'm gonna just to qualify everything I'm saying. If someone has a secret about you, that something concerns you, then that's different. You got to tell people that. Concealing a secret from your friend that concerns them is even worse. That's not allowed. Ibn Jawzi, Ibn Hazm, he writes in his book Akhlaq al-Sir, Morals and Behavior, page 125. And all these books I'm citing, sisters, are in English. And I chose these books deliberately, the ones that are translated, because you can find everything available there. You just got to sift through it. You got to read it. And sometimes I believe that we need to do a really good research in collecting this information and putting it out there. It's available already. You got to scour them, read them, compile them, organize them. So a lot of these books are in English. You can find in PDF, all of them. Here, he says, a friend who conceals a secret which concerns you is more disloyal towards you than the one who tells you a secret of yours. For the one who tells you a secret is simply betraying you, but the one who conceals one from you is betraying you and is also mistrusting you. So, for example, somebody has some information which is extremely important for me to know about their past, or something that's happened to them, or that they're in trouble with the law, or something like this. You can't hide it from me. I need to know. Otherwise, maybe I'm going to be in trouble. So imagine someone that has a problem with the law, or someone has some kind of serious issue. It affects me, or something they know that I need to know about them, and they never told me. No, that's not sisterhood. That's just khiyana, that's betrayalment, and also a person is not trustworthy. So I would highly recommend when it comes to the secrets issue, we try to work all of us together on that. Even if someone told you something in confidence, what do? You bury it with yourself, right? Unless the person, you have to let them know there's conditions when you're allowed to share it. We talked about that in another class, and in the Mandumat Adab, when you can share a secret and when you can't. Number 4, loyalty and fulfilling promises and trusts. Sisters who have sisterhood, they fulfill each other's trust. Allah says about the believers, those who fulfill their promise when they promised. And then, right? Those who fulfill their promise, right? When they take it. So trust and promise could be here anything. It could be like you took a promise on oath, right, or some kind of deal you're gonna do. You gotta fulfill it. All right. Another one Allah mentions about Ismail. Mentioned the Kitab Ismail. Mentioned the book Ismail. Verily, he was one sadiq al-wa'd. He was true to what he promised. Look at that. And it was a Nabi, Siddiq al-Nabi, or Nabi Rasul al-Nabi. Sorry, he was a messenger and a prophet. So the thing that we need to think about here, if the believer keeps trusts, promises, breaking them can break the sisterhood. So, for example, if someone told you I'm going to be there tonight and they don't come, Okay, that's one off. Then they're not there again. Every time they do that, oh yeah, I'm gonna get you this. They never get you it. You guys can imagine, you can feel that, right? What kind of sisterhood is that, right? Someone keeps doing that, and then later on, you feel like I need to just kind of like stop talking, giving a hope names from this person. And here's the sifat al-munafiq amali. These are sifat amali, the physical characteristics, not the actual belief. The person, when he promises, he breaks it. So the believer is the opposite. The believers, they preserve their promises. So we need to think about sisterhood, which includes that accountability. So I'll give a small example. Somebody says, I will see you tomorrow, inshallah, and we're going to do this and this and this. And that person who you promised is going to come, right? And then you did not come. What should you do, or not able to come? You just message them and say, look, sorry, sister, I couldn't come. I'm going to be, busy. Please pardon me, right? So that's the thing that we need to think about. So inshallah ta'ala, we need to be mindful of that point. Audio is cutting, so inshallah, hopefully it doesn't cut anymore. So we need to try to be mindful of that, be careful of that. And if you cannot fulfill a promise, what do? You just remind them or excuse yourself. Okay, excusing ourselves is very important. Simple things. And loyalty looks like what? Not just I'm going to fulfill my promise to you. Ibn Qudamah, he writes in the Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin, the sixth duty is to be loyal and sincere. The meaning of loyalty is to keep the bond of love with the friend until he passes away, and after his death to keep his bond with his children, friends, and deceased. Prophet Muhammad honored an old woman and said she used to visit us at the time of Khadija, and the loyalty is part of faith. And from loyalty, he says, is to show humility to brothers, or in this case sisters, even after assuming better positions, higher status, or more wealth. Right? So just because someone was your friend when you were, down, and now you are someone who is wealthier, right? So sorry. So somebody, so let me repeat myself. Somebody couldn't fulfill the promise. They have to, if it's something they promised and they're not able to fulfill it beforehand, like they know they can't meet somebody, they just message them, they excuse themselves, and that's it. You're excused then. Or you try to make it up for that person by apologizing. I'm going to get to apologies in a second, and then making it up in time. So what we shouldn't be doing is telling people, I'm going to see you tomorrow. Well, yeah, come on, you're not going to be there. Well, yeah, you can't say I'll see you tomorrow and then you're not there, and then you didn't message, you didn't let them know what's happening. Sometimes I think the problems we're facing is not even the mistake that we make, is the way that which we go about it, right? And I'll give you an example. Somebody invites you to a wedding, you can't attend. Abdullah ibn Abbas in the Musannaf Abdul Razak, he mentioned an authentic narration where he says that one day Abdullah ibn Abbas was invited to a wedding in Mecca, and he told the person, listen, I cannot come because I'm providing the water to the Hujjaj and the people who are visiting the Haram, etc. So please pardon me. And the man said, you're pardoned. You see, pardoning when someone invites you is this one of many examples. And also, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he promised, if he gave his word, is there. Sometimes we forget that just saying, I'm sorry, I can't come, and can you reschedule ahead of time? Consideration. Right? You don't want someone to arrive in a destination only to figure out when you pick up their phone, you were never coming and you already knew that. That's stuff that really kills the system, really bothers people so much, because it's not about you didn't come, you didn't even tell me. And then your excuse might be even worse, that, oh, I forgot. And as the Arab, they say, al-udhr aghdadu min al-dhanb, right? The excuse is more ugly than the sin sometimes, right? The excuse is uglier than the sin. It's worse to tell someone that something like that, oh, I forgot. But you forgot a whole appointment. I think sometimes we take each other for granted, right? And look what he says now. From loyalty is to not lend one's ear to the accusations of the people against his friend, and not to befriend the enemy of his friend. You see? That's what it is, right? Someone talks bad about your friend, we're going to talk about that. You don't even dare listen to that. Unless the person has the proof, if it's really something issue, you take it to that person. Don't take it to me. I'm not here to hear that, right? You take it to them and deal with that. But imagine someone comes to you and says, you know what happened to sister so-and-so? I don't want to hear it, and you better not tell in front of me, right? And that's how we're supposed to be. But sometimes, we're listening before we're criticizing, right? SubhanAllah, may Allah forgive us. A beautiful hadith now, story of a man, the two men from Israel. It's a long hadith, but this is a summarized version. It should be say Bukhari. Sorry, so I'm going to change that. It's in Fil Bukhari about the two men, right? One of them, he borrowed money. He wanted to repay him. The time is up. So what did he do? He couldn't get him the money. So he took a piece of wood, cut it out, open, put 1,000 dinars, threw it in the sea and says, وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ وَكِيلًا. Allah is sufficient. Sorry, وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ shaheed. Allah is sufficient shaheed for me. And a wakil as a surety. And the money reached his friend. Scholars explain why was the man so fixated on sending the money to the man on time out of loyalty, out of respect for the time the money was due. I mean, someone will say, isn't this udhr? Isn't this an excuse? It is. But look at that kind of loyalty. Allahu Akbar. That he's putting his trust in Allah not to miss the date the money is owed. He's throwing in the sea, and Allah got the man the money. The other man got it, saw the wood, and he found his money. Allahu Akbar. Okay, move on, right, swiftly. Accepting their apologies, number 5, right? So we're going to do 5, 6, 7, I think, on this, and then we're going to try to round up with some other issues. Accepting their apologies. There's a big right of a sisterhood that if someone makes a mistake, and we all make mistakes, that we apologize. Apologizing, sign of good character and manners, and you accepting the apology, sign of your good manners. And if we don't, then that's not good manners. And sometimes we forget that apologies, we need to realize where they're coming from, right? Here we have a hadith about business. If anyone, the Prophet said, rescinds a sale, here is business, Allah will cancel his slip and his record on the day of resurrection. What does the hadith mean? Businessman, okay, a businessman sells, all right, so the seller sells to a buyer something. The buyer comes back after some time and says, I don't want it anymore. Can you please pardon me and refund me? This hadith about refunding. Is it wajib to refund? No. It's not wajib unless both parties agree, because the other person did business and this is lazim now. The transaction is binding. But the Sharia says, pardon him, forgive him. He has buyer's remorse, he's regretful, he doesn't need it. Take the money back for Allah's sake. Give the product back, money back, and take the product back. Allah will forgive you. That's business. How about friendship? How about friendship? How about dealings? Shows the Sharia wants us to be apologetic to each other when it's due. Obviously, not just apologizing all the time, as we'll see in a second. There's rules to this. Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah, writes in this transition from our teacher al-Fajr, whosoever wrongs you and comes and apologizes for his wrongness, and the trait of humbleness obliges upon you to accept his apology, whether it be true or false, and to leave his hidden affairs to Allah the Exalted. This is as the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam had done with the hypocrites, those who fell behind from joining the battle. So when he sallallahu alaihi wasallam arrived back, they came to him apologizing, whereas he accepted their excuse and left their hidden affairs to Allah. From the signs of nobility and humbleness is that if you see deficiency in his apology, look at this point key here. If you see deficiency in his apology, do not take him to account for it, and do not debate with him. Rather say, perhaps the affair is as you say, and if something has been decreed, and it will occur, and there is no prevention of it. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew Munafiqun were lying, right? And some of them, and despite that, as no one opened the door of accusing them, everything they're saying is a lie. He just went with the zahir of what they're saying. Here we learned something, that apologies, if someone gives it to you, accept it. Don't get caught up too much in what they, if they mean it or don't mean it, because number one, you can't tell just by the apology. You're going to have to tell by the character, right? The actions after. But number two, some people, they apologize and they mean well, but they don't know how to apologize perfectly. And that's my next point. Ibn Hibban and others, they talk about how to apologize. There is a art. It is an art. There are rules. But look what he says here. If someone apologizes for a past offense or shortcoming, the wise person should accept his apology and treat him as if he had never done anything wrong. Okay, now he raised the bar. If he had never done anything wrong. Now, how many of us can admit we can do that? Allahu Akbar. That's a next level emotional intelligence, right? Look at that. And most of us in the back of our head, every time you see that person, you're thinking, man, you know what they did to me? And this is what he's saying, no. Because if someone apologizes and he doesn't accept, then I fear that he may not come to the Hawd. So the Imam Ibn Hibban's argument comes from a weak hadith. This is not a strong hadith. That says whoever rejects an apology won't drink from the Hawd, or the pool of the Prophet Muhammad. That's a weak hadith. So we're going to discard that. But look at the rest part of the part. Is that if a person falls short in his conduct towards his brother, he should apologize for his shortcoming. He also writes, when a person apologizes, he deserves forgiveness, because offering apology for a mistake requires humility, which necessitates the calming of angry feelings. If a person is sincere in his apology, he will be humble in both his speech and actions. So that's how we know he's sincere, what he does and how he says it and what happens after. But I don't know when the apology comes if it's perfect, and I'm not responsible for that. Because imagine the way we treat people, they're going to treat us, right? Imagine today we're very difficult to accept apologies. Ah, and people are not going to accept yours. And then you're going to have another problem. And it's not kind. Because if someone made a mistake, then apologize, even if the wrong way. What do? You accept it, and maybe later you can help them figure out the right way. There is entire books and chapters on the art of apology. I don't have time, obviously, to get into that. Sheikh Faisal Hashidi Habibullah Ta'ala from Yemen, he has a nice book, an excellent work, يعني very rare kind of book. It's called Al-Ihtidar, Fan wa Dhawq. Apology, Art, and Decorum. And I encourage people, whoever can go, you can see it's PDF available. And inshallah, one day we should study the art of apology. One rule, for example, you don't apologize to someone more than once. That's considered unacceptable, because they mentioned that apologize twice or thrice is to put injury over insult, is to remind the person of the offense you did. So, for example, someone came to you and said sorry one time nicely, good. Imagine they come again, I'm sorry. Third time, I'm sorry. Okay, so why you keep saying sorry? Why you keep reminding me of what you did wrong to me? The ulama mentioned this. Right? Apologizing more, tikrar or i'tidar, doing too much. And sometimes we do this, right? You send someone like a 10 apologies, sorry. Another person's like getting angry, right? And you're wondering, why are they getting angry? It's like maybe you're doing it wrong, you know. The book is sadly not English, only Arabic. Inshallah, one day I hope one day we can teach it and go over it, right? Because I actually believe that book should be translated and published. Fantastic. And Shaykh Faisal Hashidi, Habibullah Ta'ala, he has some books. Allah only knows if they were to be translated and put in English, they are a masterpiece in some topics. Unbelievable work that's so beneficial, especially for us people here in the West. Some of his books is unbelievable. So I hope one day we can go over that book. But I'm just mentioning the point. General rule: sister apologizing, accepted. If they did it not the best way, still accept it. If you think they didn't mean it, still accept it. That's the best way, because we're sisters and brothers in faith. Moving along, advising them and seeking their advice. You know, it's a two-way street when it comes to brotherhood and sisterhood. So sisters should advise one another and seek their advice. The rights of the Muslim, we mentioned earlier, then he seeks counsel, and when he seeks it, you give it. So if your sister says, I need help, you help her. She said, I need advice. What should I do? You advise her. I mean, know the hadith to me also that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Ad-din nasiha, religion is sincere advice. Okay. From here then, the one who's asked for advice should give the advice, and they should also give advice that they themselves will take. If someone comes to you and says, I'm seeking your advice, be careful. You are in a position of responsibility. Al-mustasharu mu'tamanun. The hadith says, the one who's giving counsel is responsible. Hadith sahih. Yeah, sometimes, it happens to us, right? Sometimes someone asks you advice, you're telling them some interesting stuff that you know in the back of your head, maybe I wouldn't even do it. If you wouldn't do it, don't tell someone it. You see, so like, for example, someone says, should I marry this guy? And you're thinking ahead like, well, and you're making like a theoretical, hypothetical. Simple. Would you, or yes or no? Like, you got to look at it from your side. Be honest, but also, right, don't be over the top. Be honest. And here's a hadith, there's another hadith here. This hadith, anyone who gives a Muslim brother misguided advice when they consult him has betrayed them. So talk about sisterhood and brotherhood being betrayed. Someone asked you for advice. You gave them not a good advice. It's not a good one. It's not guided. It's not experience-based. It's not Islamic. You've betrayed them. I think sometimes maybe that's happens a lot too, right? You give people advice. Sometimes you wonder, like, oh, should I even tell the person anything? If you're not sure, probably ask someone to get advice from somebody else. Right? It's always good to seek advice from others. Seek consultation, Allah says, from one another. Here now, Ibn Hazm, in his akhlaq wasiyar, morals and behavior, he says, rahimahullah, when you give advice, give it softly. Do not shout it out. Use hints. Do not speak openly unless you are advising someone who's determined not to understand. Then explanations will be essential. And do not give advice only on condition that is followed. This one, the ulama always focus on this. Do not give advice only on condition that is followed. Otherwise, you are a tyrant and not an advisor. You are demanding obedience. You're not allowing religious feelings of brotherly spirit their due. Neither reason nor friendship gives you the right to insist. Sometimes I think we need to even step back and wonder, if I'm advising somebody, and then I'm telling them after they give the advice, why you didn't listen to me? فذكر إنما أنت مذكر لست عليهم بمسيطر. Remind them, you only remind the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You have no right or ability to strong arm them. You can't force it about anything. And imagine today, sisters, sometimes you might notice that someone asks you advice, right? Then you see them going the other way. They don't listen to you. We're upset, right? Don't be upset. You did your job. Don't be upset. You're not right. You don't have a right to be angry. Why? Because you don't have the right that they have to listen to you. You did your job. They asked you, you gave it. You see, when you remove that expectation, suddenly those unfounded feelings disappear, and we find out, you know what? I don't even know why I have a problem with that sister. She did what she was allowed to do. Sharia told her that she doesn't have to listen to me. And here's another one. Ibn Hibban says that a person consulted is entrusted, but his opinion is not guaranteed. He who consults guards himself from error and has the choice to accept advice, opinion, or refuse it. Allahu Akbar. Sometimes when we read these advices of the ulama, I think a lot of problems can be solved alone just by these kinds of advices. And I'm sure you guys can think of examples in your own life, right? But it's happened, right? Where somebody felt slighted. And how dare someone ask me for advice and then oppose me? It's like, well, they didn't ask you the advice just for you're going to listen to them, right? Otherwise, that's not advice. And the last one for this, right? Before we try to wrap up some practical things, defending, number 7, defending the honor behind their back. You know, if someone's your sister in faith, if someone talks bad about them, you're not allowed to allow that to pass. If they're higher in regards to you or lower than that, in the sense that as long as they're Muslim and what a person is saying is not right or unjust or unfounded, you have to defend them in the best way you can. Abu Darda, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, when Muslim defends his brother's honor in his absence, Allah will protect his face from the fire on the day of resurrection. Another hadith, Asma bin Yazid, narrates, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, whoever defends the flesh of his brother in his absence, then is a right upon Allah to free them from the fire on the day of judgment. So now we have an example of this in the example of Ka'b Malik. We all know this hadith, right? Ka'b Malik, when he did not come to the battle of Tabuk, he was from those who were behind, who stayed behind. A man, and this is the full part, some parts in the narration, Bukhari Muslim. What happened? Nabi Sallallahu said to the Sahaba, what happened to Ka'b Malik? Where is he? Wasn't there, right? A person from Banu Salima, or I said Banu Salima, O Messenger of Allah, the beauty of his cloak and the appreciation of his finery have detained him. You see, he made an accusation upon this Mu'adh ibn Jabal. Look at that. Mu'adh ibn Jabal, the Sahaba with the most knowledge, right? He admonished him and said, O Messenger of Allah, by Allah, we know nothing about him but good. Beautiful example of how the Sahaba defending another Sahabi who they know upon good instantaneously, not waiting right then and there. And Mu'adh has more knowledge about him and also more knowledge in general. That's a beautiful example. And I know we write to Kitab al-Adhkar, know that it's necessary for the one who hears a Muslim being backbitten, that he responds to him and scolds the one who says it. And if he does not scold him with his hand, right? You should scold, sorry, should say his tongue. You should scold him with his hand. And again, with the conditions that you can do that. So it means like if somebody, you can literally physically teach them a lesson, it's talking about people underneath your authority, right? Like a mother with a child or something like this. Right? Authority, parent to child, those kind of things, siblings who are younger. But he says if you can't with your tongue or your hand, you get up and leave. Now, is this the best way of doing it? Right? I would not necessarily advise every time your fan bites, you slap them up across the head. But here, I'm going to cite Ibn Hazm's speech. Ibn Hazm has an excellent speech where he talks about steps. Allahu Akbar. It's absolutely amazing, actually. In his morals and behavior, page 112, 113. Steps to how to do it. He says, this is how I defend my brother when someone backbites him. And he gives you a list, a detailed game plan. Can you imagine that, sister? He says, this is what I do first, then I do this. If it doesn't work, I go here. SubhanAllah. Sometimes you wonder, like, what's really going on is that we're missing out on these scholarly advices, right? Like Ahlul Ilm, what they have to offer for us beyond the ahkam, the issues of rulings of halal and haram, is akhlaq and adab. Ibn Qudamah, he writes again, Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin, this also includes thanking him, right, for what he has done for you. And defending him is absent of someone who speaks ill of him. The duties of brotherhood include readiness to protect and help each other. If it occurs in some hadith, a Muslim is a brother of a Muslim, he doesn't wrong him, does not forsake him. There you go. Does not forsake him. And whenever a Muslim neglects to defend the honor of his brother, he says, he has forsaken him. وَلَا يَخْذِلُهُ وَلَا يَظْلِمُهُ, doesn't oppress him, in order to just let him go. I need forsaken. And I think this is a good point to highlight, that we try our best to be for our sisters. So example would be, right, you're in the masjid and you heard another sister telling you something bad about a sister that you actually know is your sister Sam, first of all, and sister that you know personally know, or is about. You don't allow that person to, right, to continue talking about that. You say, look, if you're something like this is true, or first of all, I shouldn't backbite them. You should tell them directly to them and try to solve it, the issue, because backbiting doesn't do anything. And secondly, is that in your company, as a Muslim who has sisterhood and faith, I advise you to stop backbiting. Otherwise, I'm not going to sit in that gathering. If we police one another like this, the sisterhood increases because everybody has everybody else's back. But imagine some of us are backbiting others and we allow it. Then later on we're gonna complain, right? That we're not feeling like people care about us, we're not protecting us. And this is the truth, because what's not uncommon is backbiting. What is uncommon or can be disturbing is that somebody backbited you and there's somebody else in the company and they didn't say nothing to defend you. That's what bothers people most, right? It's like, how does that even happen? Someone else said something in a gathering and no one said anything to defend me. المسلم أخو المسلم لا يظلمه ولا يخذله ولا يحقره. The Muslim is the Muslim sister or the brother of the Muslim. They don't oppress them, no forsake them, no belittle them. Okay, if you want to know a helpful strategy in order to defend your sister, Ibn Qudama says here's two ways you can to help you get better at it. Practical advice. He says to estimate the situation, consider from two angles. First, he assume that what is being said about him will be said about you in his presence. Then say what you like to him to say. So assume, he says, that what is being said about him would be said about you in his presence. All right. So imagine, that was what happened to you. Imagine you were the one who's being backbited instead of the other person. What would you want your friend to say? So you say then, defending him, right? So Mu'adh Jabal, when he heard what happened about what they said about Ka'b Malik, instantly he said no, because of course he knows Ka'b, only good about him, and he would like that Ka'b would defend him like the same. Secondly, assume that he's listening behind the wall. Imagine this person being backbiting behind the wall. Whatever your heart would tell you to say in his defense, in his presence, it should tell you the same in his presence. If one is not sincere in his brotherhood, he's a hypocrite. So what is he trying to say here? That you gotta find ways to do it. And I know nobody likes to confront anybody, but remember, if somebody's backbiting, that's a mistake. If we let it go, that's another mistake. That's two. I want to finish now. So these are some of the right sisters. There's so much more, but these are, I think we did a quite good summary of some of the big ones. Let's get on to the real practical points and they can really foster. And these are the list, not exhaustive, because again, I ran out of time preparing for this. A lot of things can be said to help get the sisterhood going. Number one, right, is starting with the hukuk before even the list. Before the list, start by giving each other their rights. What we mentioned before and more. Let's push ourselves to do that, because then we're getting closer to having the ideal sisterhood. But on a practical level, number one, spreading salam among sisters, Hayyid Muslim. Salam bainakum. So that's the first one. You see someone you don't know, salam alaikum. In the message, salam alaikum. In the house, salam alaikum. On the phone, anywhere. That's the best way to create that love. The Prophet said that's how we get to Jannah. More salam. That's a beautiful tradition, and I think, alhamdulillah, most of us are good at it. Number two, shaking each other's hand. Right? Hadith in Sahih Jami' that Allah forgives the sin of two Muslims who shake their hands. Shaking the hands has a great impact in creating, number one, the spiritual benefit, but number two, the proximity. You see, proximity. If I shake your hand, that's touch. Or the principle of proximity. The closer we get, the closer we are. Right? The principle of proximity. That's when you teach people, or you benefit people, or you want to show someone that you're a friend of theirs. You come and you sit next to them, right? You shake their hand. With children, you pat them on the head. Why is that important? These principle proximity is very powerful, right? So someone said, what if hugging instead of shaking hands? That's not the sunnah. Hugging only when you don't see someone for a long time, or when they came back from a travel or the likes. So sisters got to reorient towards that, because I know sisters love to hug one another. I think that's the tradition. We need to move to the handshaking. Hugging is only if I haven't seen for a long time. So if we haven't seen for a long time, go ahead. If we see each other often, just shaking the hands. And it gets to hasanat. But the proximity part isn't key. Imagine you see someone say salam alaikum, you keep far away. How are you going to build sisterhood like that if you're all so far from each other? And I'm talking about people you know you don't know. It's very important. Give salam to someone you don't know, right? Shake the hands of someone you don't know too. Very, very, very helpful. It brings people, it breaks the ice. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that's why he was the last one to let go of the hand, right? Last one. Why? To let people know how much he cares. Number three, showing love and concern. How do you do that? You actually love for your brother, love for yourself, love for your sister, love for them. So you show it through your actions, but also the fact that you love them, and that display of love, it comes to action. The scholars will say in the next one, which is, or it's coming later to talk about that right here, number five, right, which is informing one another that you love each other for Allah's sake. So concern and love through action and also by speech. If you love someone for Allah's sake, you say it to them. You let them know how much you appreciate them. Ibn Qudama earlier, he said, let them know how much you praise them. Let them know what you think good about them. Number five, giving gifts to one another. You know, it doesn't have to be expensive. And also the rule, it should not be frequent. It should be infrequent here and there. Why am I saying this? Ibn Hibban and Ibn Qudama both mentioned frequent gift giving is suspicious. Suspicious. Someone gives you gifts every time you see them often. You're like, hey, what do you want from me? Right? And we're human beings, right? We know that feeling of someone cares about you and someone just, I don't know what they're doing, right? So, of course, if someone gives you a gift and it's not like something special, like it's a friendship, you guys share, you bring each other coffee or tea or something, that's khayr, and there's no problem. But imagine every time you see someone, you got something for them. Usually, it means you're trying to do something here, but the scholars advise to do it here and there. One of the reasons it has more meaning. Right? Imagine once in a while you brought something for somebody. Oh, that person is gonna, and the person who least expecting it. You see, tahabu, the least expected. That's what I'm trying to talk about. When you go to the masjid, you just give everybody something. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he was winning people's heart this way, and people could never ever forget about those moments, right? So it's really important, sister, especially those closest to you. Ask yourself a question: when was the last time I gave my best friend a gift? Or at least any sister I know for a long time. It's not right. I should give them something, even if something small. Another example, humility. When each person is on the same level of taqwa, knowledge, practice, etc. Some of us more successful, some of us more this, some of us more that. So what do? Humility. When you sit with your brothers, your sisters, you sit down with humility. Nobody thinks you're better than else. That really brings out love. Because imagine I have a lot of things going on in my life. When I see my best friend, it doesn't matter. We're friends. It doesn't matter what's going on in my life. We're on the same page. You're just like me. So humility is really important. And also it takes away the feeling of jealousy. Some ulama say the great causes of disunity in sisterhood and brotherhood is jealousy. When you know your brother or sister has more than you or something, and you can sense it from them that they know that and they try to show it off. So humility. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to sit amongst the Sahaba, and one day he said to him, "Inna Allah awha ilayya." Allah inspired me to tell you all, "An tawada'u, be patient, be humble." Who's saying this? Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who told the Sahaba, "Ana sayyidu ibn Adam wa la fakhr." I am the master, the best of all mankind, but I am not arrogant. Imagine he's telling you to be humble, and he's the best. SubhanAllah. So humility really does a lot. Number seven, visiting one another for Allah's sake. Hadith, the man who visited his friend in another village, right? So visitations. And the further you visit, the more the reward. Hadith Sahih Jami'. One of the things Nabi Sallallahu said, one of the ways to Jannah, the people of Jannah, is the one who visits his or her brother or sister at the end of the city, at the end of the city, for Allah's sake. Sometimes we Toronto traffic, for example, with us who live in Toronto, or London traffic, or any traffic in any major city in the West and the East, it's terrible sometimes to get place to place. But imagine somebody comes to you, Illahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, to visit you all the way because you're having a hard time. How can you ever forget that? And what can it do for you? And how much reward it can get you? Sometimes it's those kinds of things that we as Muslims, we need. And as sisters, sometimes another sister may need that, right? It could be a one person, a group of people just to come visit one another, right? Number eight, noting, I'll change that. Not thinking others are obliged to check on you, rather it is for Allah's sake. I was reading this in preparation. Ibn Qudama, he writes that you shouldn't believe that it's obligatory, but otherwise they have to check in on you and look out for you. They only do for Allah's sake. What is this opening? They're opening the door of expectations. Expectations are the killers of sisterhood and friendship and relationships. If I think somebody owed me something, I'm entitled, right? I'm only allowed to feel the way if the Qur'an and Sunnah allow it. And you actually say that's a right of mine. But what if I told you today somebody's supposed to check in on me? And then I look around and say, nobody's checking in on me. That means nobody cares about me. That means I don't have any friends, and that's it. Where did I get that from? I think that people have to check on me. It's my right as a Muslim, they do. But why are they doing it? For Allah's sake. We need to move from ourselves to Allah and give your brother and sisters mistakes benefit of doubt. Sometimes they would like to check in on you, but they also need you to check in on them. Have you ever thought about that? There's someone who's not checking on you. Maybe they themselves need to be checked in. Maybe they're in a worse state than you. So that feeling, if you take it away, you'll always be happy. I know human beings, we're not nice to each other. We know people let each other down, but remove that feeling from yourself. Okay, the person, no one calls me, they message me. It's okay. Just forget it. It's not something you feel obliged. It's from the haqq of Allah. If they fall short, they fall short, and Allah's right first before anyone else's. And I think that's a powerful point because I think sometimes it's all the mental, right? A lot of the problems we have is this, right? May Allah allow us to protect us from that, Inshallah, the questions we'll try to record them Bismillah ta'ala. We'll try to record them Bismillah. Allah, inshallah. For those who cannot stay, the questions at the end, we'll try to record them. And we're going to run up really quickly now. Okay, so praise the good qualities you see in your fellow sister. Another mistake that we do, we tend to be a little bit stingy in praise and more critical. So lots of praise. Ibn Qudamah, he writes, you praise them for what? Their handwriting, clothing, good speech, character. You see something in your friend, your sister, you say it. Sister, mashallah, you're very good at this, but it has to be meaningful too, right? Can't just be like, see someone, mashallah, nice shoes, and so nice. that could be insult, right? But let's say someone, this is what we need from that. We're human beings too, right? A little bit of flattery, it does a lot for us, even though it's just talk, but it counts. It counts. And number 10, being considerate for your fellow sisters in situations. Ibn Hibban, he mentions that be considerate. People are going through hard times. Just like you wish them for them to be nice with you, be nice with them. And also pardon people. A few more, agreeing with your fellow sister more than you disagree with them in matters that are not haram or Islamic. That one's from Surah Kahf, Musa al Khidr story. Agree more than disagree, as long as it's not haram. So people want to do something, agree. Sisterhood should be based on agreements. Muwafaqah, agree. Don't be the person who always want to sway your way. And I wish I had more time. I can show you some nice benefits to ulama Allah list about friends who are only friends if it goes their way. Some people, they want things to go their way only, right? And this is a mistake. You can't have people becoming like you. You gotta want to become like them. And that's part of sisterhood. Now, I'm not saying you're gonna change your character, but what you don't want is the person is a friend of yours and you're only in it because things go your way. No, it should be that both parties are trying to do for other. Where do you want to eat? Where do you want to? Where should we drink something or get some tea or some sweets? Oh, you pick. You pick. That's how it should be. Okay, anybody pick. We're all together. It's okay. We just share ideas. We're more easygoing. Not okay. This is the way I like it, and another person just feels obliged. Then my sister said, always greeting with a smile. Yeah, we could have that one, smiling all the time, right? Being nice. I never told them not overstepping personal boundaries of your sister, being fair in your expectation of them. When you know that your friends, they can't do everything for you, don't expect them to. Just like you wouldn't be able to do things for them. Personal boundaries. Sometimes, I want my friend to be there for me all the time, but I'm not there for them all the time. Is that fair for me? It's not fair. If I know, for example, sisters have family, they're busy, can I expect them to be able to hang out with me whenever I'm free? No, I have to be considerate. I'm not free all the time. They're not free all the time. We got to work together. So overstepping boundaries can be also problematic. Number 13, do not give up on them. Ibn Qudamah mentions this one. Do not give up on them when they make a mistake in religion. Rather, advise them, work on them. Somebody falls short in the deen, don't give up on them, don't cut them off. What do you do instead? Advise. He said advise them, admonish them. It takes different steps. You could read it in English. You can see. And I think that's a powerful one too. Someone's your friend, then they start falling down their deen. What's your job? Push to be azri. Be like how Musa and Harun were. When Musa says to Allah, oh Allah, can you please pick Harun as my supporter for me? Waziran as a supporter. Why? So you can strengthen me. We can remember Allah together. Someone's falling short. That's why I'm a friend. Right? We want people to be there for us. Now when I'm going down, you just drop me. Right? Imagine that. And I give tawfiq. And one last one, avoiding arguing with your sister. If one has to argue in the best of manners. Don't argue too much. It's not a beneficial thing. Sometimes, subhanAllah, many of the times we're in debate, we don't need to debate. Maybe I'm right, but I'm wrong. Maybe you're right. Maybe we're both wrong. Wallahu alam. right? But at the end of the day, if we're going to argue, we're going to argue the best way. I may accept from all of us and accept and make it beneficial for us. I want to finish with just a last one, and then we take all the the benefits questions here. Corruptors of sisterhood. What are the corruptors? There are many. I'm just going to mention three of them because I've run over time here. Number one, falling short and giving the rights we just talked about. If you don't give your sister the rights, then you're already falling short. Be a Muslim, akhul Muslim. Be a sister to your other sister. Be a brother to a brother should be to his brother. So remember, if you know, for example, you're not doing what you're supposed to do to your sister, or you fell short, no problem. Renew the attention, try to work on it. But when you don't have that in the community, no wonder then sisters are always saying, I feel like I don't have any sisterhood. And I can imagine, even again, the brothers have the same complaint. I can just imagine, because we are also, all of us, looking out for each other, but more importantly, we're not actually doing what we're supposed to do. Number two, a huge one, sins. I think this is a very important one, because the sins is one of the things that I think actually destroys the friendships and the sisterhoods altogether. And as Malik reports, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, two people do not love each other in Almighty, right, for each other in Almighty, or Allah, or should say for Allah's sake, or in Islam, if the first one wrong action, the one of them could, okay, so maybe the wording and translation is not the correct. So I'm going to reword it and I'll fix it. Two people who do not love each other for the sake of Allah, then later separate, except due to a sin committed by one of them. Allah, when you read this hadith, it's like one of the most important hadiths about the brotherhood and sisterhood, right? So two people who love for Allah's sake. So clearly they're brothers and sisters in faith, in this case, sisters in faith. And then what happens? They separate. Something went wrong. So what is separating them? Ma tawad ithnan, two people don't love for Allah's sake. Fillah, for Allah's sake. فَيُفَرَّقُ بَيْنَهُمَا. Then they suddenly split, or eventually split. إِلَّا بِذَنْبٍ يُحْدِثُهُ أَحَدُهُمَا. Except that one of them committed a sin. What is this sin? Scholars try to explain what is it that happened. Some of the commentators of the hadith, they explain that these two people love for Allah's sake, and then a sin was committed. This sin obviously could be a sin that they commit privately, which they didn't repent, or it could be their roughness, someone's rough to their brother or sister. It could be oppression. So someone did something to others or to their own, between them and Allah. And I want to highlight this point, sister. Ibn Qayyim Dawah, the cooking curious and sickness, he says that sins create loneliness between the sinner and his fellow believers and the people of good. You know, there's some people, when they see them, they don't want to hang around with the sisters anymore, or the brothers with brothers. And you tell them, why you not come out anymore? Why you not come to masjid anymore? They say, oh, I'm not this and that. Sisters, if somebody's committing sin in private, they don't want to see their brothers and sisters. They feel lonely in their company. A'udhu billah. Ibn Qayyim says that's from the athar ma'asi, the effects of disobedience. It makes you feel wahsha, loneliness, alienation from your fellow believers due to what you're doing wrong. So that means what we do privately or between us and Allah, it has impact on sisterhood. This one itself can open a huge discussion about how we can fix this, especially in a time we live in. And the last one, belittling one another. Don't take anyone for granted. These are Muslims. Some people, only Allah knows what darajah they have inside of him. You know, sometimes we look at some of our sisters or our brothers, we look down on them. This person could be better than you inside of Allah. How dare we? You know, and that's why the Muslim Muhammad said it's a sin. You look down upon them. How do you know that person is better than you? Allah, sometimes when you think about it, the greatest examples of this are the people who are most knowledgeable and most pious. And I'll just finish with one narration and then take all the questions. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim said, I remember my teacher, Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah, he said to me one time that a believer should not be, right, or a believer is a true believer, is the one who believes that he has no virtue or entitlement or right over anybody. Look again, I'm going to read the exact words. And arifu, the one who knows Allah, لا يرى ولا يرى له لا يرى على أحد حقا. He doesn't see that he has a right over anyone. ولا يشهد على غيره فضلا. He doesn't think he has virtue upon anybody. ولذلك لا يعاتب ولا يطالب ولا يضارب. For those reasons, he doesn't rebuke others quickly, right? And he doesn't demand things, nor does he fight or quarrel for others, towards others. Al-Arifu, one who knows himself and Allah, does not see that he has over anybody a right, nor does he think that he has a virtue over anyone. And for those reasons, he doesn't belittle them, he doesn't rebuke them, he doesn't demand things or fights. He says now that Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentions at the end of that, that's one of the great advices I heard from my Shaykh. Something like this, when you hear it, you're thinking like, subhanAllah, somebody like that, who kind of person is this? This is someone who, as we know, has a great sense of taqwa. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us. I apologize for any shortcomings, inshallah, in this discussion. Inshallah, I'm going to take the questions now, bidnillah ta'ala, as many as I can before we can end, right? So I'm just going to go and try to keep the questions more, the answers are quite brief. Otherwise, like I said, this is a long topic, bidnillah ta'ala. Question says, okay, so we have some of the earlier questions here. Can the highest level be one's husband? Would the reward be the same? So between husband and wife, there's a different relationship between brotherhood and sisterhood of closeness. But yes, they can also form a relationship which is of a very high level because they are Muslims and they have a relationship which is special. In fact, brother and sister should have a level, even in some ways, is more unique and can even be higher. In fact, it's closer. It's closer. Why? Because what does Allah say about the wife and husband? وَالصَّاحِبَ بِالْجَنْبِ وَالصَّاحِبَ بِالْجَنْبِ. Allah describes the wife as who? A sahib, a friend at the side. Right? So Allah says in the Quran, there's a sahib al-junub, right? There's a companion who's at who's further and one who's near, right? So sahib al-jambi wa bil-sabi. Sahib al-jamb, ulama say, sahib al-jamb is your wife. So literally, there's a companionship there and there's a friendship there. It's higher. It's a very unique level, of course. That discussion is for. Can be taken, inshallah, through books of Fadl. You can learn more about that. But yes, it's possible. Number two, what are we supposed to apply the sisterhood to those who are innovators, either from arrogance or ignorance? So someone who's innovator, they have a sisterhood, so they have the lowest level, but they don't have friendship. And we'll talk about them in another time. Ibn Qudama in his Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin, he mentioned that for the innovator, someone with innovations, who's knowledgeable, versus the one who's ignorant, they still can be a person you interact with, but there's a certain etiquette. So yes, you can interact with somebody. They're all Muslims, so they have the base level of haqq, but they're not going to have all the rights because they have certain false shortcomings, especially if they know what they're doing. But if they're ignorant, there's different dealing. But if they're knowledgeable, yes, we have to stay further away from so we don't become misguided. That's special rules. If you I recommend go back to Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin. He talks about that specifically. Next question is, some sisters are unable to join. Okay, we talked about that. It's possible Telegram. Okay. Yes, we're gonna share this at the end, inshallah, all this presentation. Question says, what do I do as a young person when I see a friend falling into haram relationship with a Muslim guy? Should I marry in the future? I message her advising her. So you advise her, you do your best, and then you try to work that way to help them. Are you going to cut them off? Not necessarily that quickly. You're going to work through stages to get them to fear Allah, to know this is haram. But you need to remember that person, they don't take advice always the quickest. Everybody is different. They don't mind to take it immediately. But through your good preaching and your interaction, you can help them. But also, if you feel that the person is just taking this lightly, they don't want to deal with this stuff, they don't want to take you seriously, you can disengage with them. But not totally, because still have the rights of sisterhood, but that doesn't mean that they have to be your close friends. Remember, friendship is higher than sisterhood. You have to always remember this. We can't conflate the two. Sisterhood and friendship are different. We're talking about the base level for all Muslims. And with friendship, that's a higher level. You have a right to defend those who are like you. وَلَا تُصَاحِبْ إِلَّا مُؤْمِنًا. Do not be friends except a believer who's a piety. But it doesn't mean that you're going to cut everybody off. So don't conflate this one with this one. This one I'm talking about, everyone who's a Muslim has these rights I talked about today. But for the friendship, the higher they go up, the more they have. And I think sometimes you want to advise them. If it doesn't work, try to disengage a little bit, see if it's going to work. Maybe later she will realize your advice counted. Someone says, Salaam alaikum rahmatullah, Ustad, off topic. If we need to make up obligatory days of Ramadan, can we make the niyyah of Arafah and fast them? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. The correct opinion is fasting Arafah is an ibadah, which is maqsood. His intent is لغيرها. It's for other than it. So therefore, scholars say, like Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen and the permanent community, others, you can combine between the making of Ramadan and Arafah, because Arafah has it's an unrestricted general hadith about fasting. So you can go under, you can combine between the fasting of Ramadan, which is specific, making up that day, and this one. And that's the fatwa of the ulama. The details of that discussion can be explained another time. Question says, is it offering to help a sister with sympathy or therapy mean we're talking them away from relying upon Allah? No, it isn't. relying upon Allah, it doesn't mean that you don't have any friends to talk about. Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim talk about complaining for Allah's sake, to relieve their stress and going to others, as for Allah's allowed. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he had a problem with his wives, Abu Bakr and Umar came to console him, and they laughed and they talked. That's part of brotherhood. Imagine Umar came to Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, told him this, and he says it's true, and they talked about it, and that's fine. So going to seek help to remove the stress and the worries, that's not considered wrong. Yaqub alayhi salam complaining unto Allah is the higher level, they say. So Ibn Qayyim and Jawzi, they say that's the higher level. And I think we translated something on this before. The higher level is that only for Allah, but seeking relief from others is something totally Islamic if the intention is to seek help and to release that kind of difficulties. Allahu A'lam. Question says, are we obliged to accept an invitation when we know there will be a fitna? No. If it's haram there, you don't have to go. But what you do is that you try to see if you can influence the situation beforehand and make it halal. If it's haram, then you don't go. Allah says the believers, those who don't witness zur, evil, which includes music and the likes, according to the Mufassirin. So if it's something haram, you don't attend, and there's no sin on you. But if you know you can influence it positively, try to message them beforehand and say, hey, I would like to attend, but this is happening. Can we stop that? Also, we don't have time to make up these fasts for Ramadan because of the period. So if you can't make up the fast of Ramadan and now, because of these times, you can make it up after your menstrual cycle ends because of Ramadan to Ramadan. But let's say next Ramadan came and someone didn't make it up. We said in the fiqh classes before, a person repents to Allah for that, and after the Ramadan ends, if you make up the days, right? But they try to proceed as fast as they can, right? Try to proceed in making up the days. That's the best habit, ulama say. Question says, if we can't keep a promise, what do we do? Okay, we explained that. The PDF of Sheikh Hashi's kitab, it's in Arabic, so maybe we're going to have to do it one day, inshallah. We try to cover it in Arabic and try to translate it. Someone said, can you please go over the expiation and for the shortcomings of these things? So the shortcoming expiation is if someone falls short of the right of another, first thing you have to repent to Allah. And second thing is that once you know about them, now you have to rectify them by doing them. You see, sometimes you remember some of these rights are communal, some of them are specific. If you fall short of something communal, like you didn't know about it or you never knew, then it's a communal responsibility. Everyone's doing it. You have to try your best to make sure that you are going forward trying to participate in it. You have some hand in it. But when it comes to friends, you seek pardon of your friend and let them know that, hey, look, if I wasn't good, and you're not gonna say if, you're gonna say I wasn't. Okay, the part of good apologies, you say specific. So you say to them like, look, let's say you have a close friend, you were not nice to them, you broke these conditions and these rights. Just tell them straight, sister, please apologize, accept my apology. I wasn't the best friend. I wasn't really aware of all of this stuff. Or you don't have to say excuses like that. You say, I wasn't the best Muslim. Please forgive me. I'm going to try to be better. And actually speak louder than words. So if you repent to Allah, let them know that if you felt any shortcomings you did, please pardon me. Because sometimes they're specific, sometimes they're general. If it's general, you could work on it by doing what we learned. If specific things that happen to you and them, try to seek pardon. Right? And pardon one another, inshallah, and go forward in a new light. There's no specific expiation beyond that. Because these are things that were huquq bayn an-nas. So the Nabi Sallallahu general advice is anyone who has the right of another person which they didn't do, fulfill it now, because Yawm al-Qiyamah there's no way to deal with that except with dinar with dirham, right? The actual, subhanAllah, the deeds. Question, this means you're making excuses for your sister, making good thoughts, even though from the parent they may be wrong. Exactly. You always have good thoughts of someone, the principle of charity, until proven otherwise. It just feel based upon the parent. If someone's apologizing, we say generally accepted. But when something shows you otherwise, that's different. If you have dalil and aqara and indicators. We're talking about apologies. Someone's apologizing to you. If they really didn't care, they wouldn't apologize, right? Truly, right? So sometimes we gotta be easy going with others. Sometimes we're not easy going with another, and I think it creates the problems that are worse. Okay, we took those ones. May Allah accept Jazakumullah khair for all those who are listening and good comments here. May Allah accept from all of us and benefit from us. Okay, so we talked about expiation a little bit. Someone says, Assalamu alaikum. How do we go about secrets that are shared between two people? For example, wife wants to keep pregnancy secret, but husband feels he has the right to share with whoever he wants, or vice versa. So here, the family should come together, and they have to realize that sharing pregnancy, we studied that already in our parenting class. It's not a good idea to share with the whole world. Firstly, because hasad, there's always envious people. And number two, they should talk about it, and the husband shouldn't just do what it goes against his wife, his wishes, right? If she wants to keep a secret, they should talk about it together. And Islamically, it's better to hide it unless it's to very close people, because that's not a good habit to begin with. So I would say have a conversation. If it's not getting there, right, try to find some middle ground and say, look, this is how I'm feeling. it's very important to express our feelings and try to make it like a serious thing. Like, I don't prefer that and I don't like it. Five says maybe want to keep a secret to ill treatment. Yeah, exactly. Because women, they know that sometimes some other people may have some other experience, negative experiences towards them. So I think they have to sit down. The husband has to really, again, emotional intelligence, awareness. That's a real. We gotta listen. We gotta be considerate. Right, the three C's of marriage, right, is one of them is consideration. Right, you gotta consider it. But I think I would recommend the question if that's happened to a wife to sit down with the husband and say, "Look, this is how I feel about it," and if he's not understanding, that you can maybe take it to the Islamic side. And in the parenting book in the beginning, we have a discussion about sharing the news with everybody. Right, you can see, inshallah. Speak about Allah is definitely well, yeah, Camila, accept from us and allow us to benefit others by it. But it's just how do we go about with in-laws who mistreat, humiliate repeatedly, and how much right do they have over us as daughter? This is a long discussion, right? Maybe we'll try to reserve that for another talk because I have some discussion and some work on sister-in-laws and Islam, well, in-laws in Islam, some material and some things like that. So maybe another time we can get into that because that's a big one. And sometimes, as the sister says, it's a huge problem. But it's just as a family, will the father have more right to children over the family mother? So those ones are again more related in detail. Due to a little bit of time and a half, I would pardon, excuse myself from taking that just for the time. But inshallah, I hope in the future to have more topics like this, and hopefully, inshallah, we can do another one of these. Inshallah, and if not, the whole lecture. The Arafah. So we said that you can make it up. You can do. If someone has missed fast Ramadan, they could do the missed fast and Arafah together. No problem. It's Fatwa ibn Uthaymeen and permanent committee. Because fasting Arafah is unrestricted in general, it doesn't have a specific fast for it. Rather, any fast will qualify as fasting Arafah. Man sama yawm Arafah, su'ila an sawmi yawm Arafah is unrestricted in general. So you can do it. Ibn Uthaymeen, and the permanent committee. So question is that how do we how do you navigate a situation where you're not able to compatible sisters in terms of personality and you always disagree with them? That's the thing. There has to be a level of tanazul, a level of disagree of compromise. And if I recommend everybody go to the tafsir. Please, everybody read the tafsir of Surah Kahf, Sheikh Imam Sa'di, the tafsir of Surah Kahf with Musa al-Khadir. 70 ayahs, 70, around 70, around there, downwards. He mentions 40 benefits of friendship, and part of it is this: that Musa was not able to get along with Khidr at that point because they kept asking questions, and then at the end what happens? Too much disagreement. That's it. Between me and you, no longer we can be friends. So Imam Sa'di derives a great benefit from that story. 40 benefits from the whole thing. Highly encouraged, because I think a lot of people, they don't want to let go of their ways. They want to be their own way. If you want to be fostering brother sisterhood, it's not my way or the highway. It's together. We're in it together. So I recommend that due to the time. Question says relative why you can't say motive. Okay, the motive discussion, I think there's something on the TorontoDawah about it. Just for the sake of time, I'll reference them to there because we don't have time right now to go into details, but there's no evidence for it. That's the summary of the answer. So a lot of the questions are coming in. I think, inshallah, we're going to have to cut because of the time, and also we need to stop the recording for the cuts. So it says consistent class in Toronto be posted in groups so other sisters can listen to elsewhere. Inshallah, they will be released bi'idhnillah ta'ala slowly and surely. Bi'idhnillah ta'ala, the class that we've done in TorontoDawah for the sisters and a lot of other material that we have, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, will be released and shared to the sisters, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Right now, we're going to stop with this due to the time. And I'm going to stop the recording and we're going to save it.